Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. There's a story the Imperium tells its people. A story of divine warriors, the Emperor's angels of death, clad in ceramite and fire, who stride across battlefields like demigods. It is a tale etched in golden blood, played out in countless sermons, statues, and voxcasts, that the Adeptus Astartes are humanity's saviors, unyielding in their loyalty, pure in their purpose, and blessed beyond mortal understanding. In hive cities teetering on collapse, in void ships praying for safe warp passage, in backwater worlds praying under two suns, the name of the Space Marine is spoken like a ward against evil. But stories are shadows, and shadows always hide something. What if the truth is not glory, but horror? Not salvation, but sacrifice? There is a secret buried beneath the iconography and ritual, a secret older than the heresy and darker than the eye. It is not kept from humanity to protect the Astartes, but to protect humanity from them. Because the truth would shatter the myth. The truth would break the faith. The truth is this: the Space Marines are not human anymore, and what they are is something no sane mind would want to worship. To understand the truth Space Marines hide, we must strip away everything we think we know about them. We must look beyond the chapter colors, beyond the bolters and banners and battlefield legends. Because what they truly are has nothing to do with honor or heroism. It is a biological, psychological, and spiritual transformation so complete, so invasive, that the term man ceases to apply. The Adeptus Astartes are post-human by design, built not to preserve humanity, but to transcend it in the most brutal, efficient, and emotionless way possible. Every Astartes is the product of 20 distinct gene seed implants, many of which drastically alter the recipient's biology. Their bones fuse and thicken, becoming dense enough to shrug off wounds that would tear apart a mortal. Their organs multiply: extra hearts, reinforced lungs, a black carapace that fuses their armor directly to their flesh. They can spit acid, survive in the vacuum of space for limited periods, and consume memories by eating the dead. But these enhancements are not gifts, they are violations. Each one strips away a piece of what it means to be human. Hunger fades, so does pleasure. Sleep becomes a memory. Their voices grow inhumanly deep, their eyes adjust to total darkness, and they come to feel pain not as something to fear, but as an alert. No different than a blinking warning rune. Emotion is not just trained out of them, it is chemically repressed. Psycho-indoctrination, hypnosuggestion, and recursive mnemonic drills ensure that concepts like love, grief, hesitation, and doubt become alien. Their brains are restructured. They no longer dream as humans do. They do not crave intimacy. They do not seek meaning beyond service. If a brother dies, they note it. They might speak a few words of remembrance. Then they move on. The grief we take for granted, the pain of loss that makes us feel alive, is something they are trained to bypass. Not because they lack the capacity, but because they cannot afford it. In a universe where a second's hesitation can cost a world, sorrow is a liability. But this suppression comes at a cost. The Astartes are not mindless machines. Some still remember, faintly, what it was to be human. These memories haunt them, flickering at the edges of consciousness like ghosts. A childhood face, a mother's voice, a village lost to war. These are not fond recollections, but jagged echoes they cannot fully suppress. In moments of quiet, which are rare, some Space Marines feel the pull of these fragments. They may stare too long at a starscape. They may hesitate at the cries of a child. And when that happens, the indoctrination screams back at them like a neural lash. Doubt is death. Reflection is failure. Humanity is a chain that must be broken, again and again. The warp doesn't help. While they are protected, psychically hardened against demonic intrusion, they are not immune to the spiritual erosion that comes from endless slaughter. Each battle changes them. Not in ways visible to the mechanicus, but in the slow fraying of what little soul remains. They begin to speak less, laugh less, trust less. Some become obsessed with ritual. Others turn inward, saying nothing for years. A few begin to see signs and omens where none exist. Paranoia and detachment fester. And since emotion is forbidden, none of this is ever treated. There are no chaplains who listen, only those who enforce silence. This is the true face of the Space Marine, a being forged into physical perfection, stripped of emotional identity, and programmed to kill without hesitation. They are not protectors in the way humanity imagines. They are a scalpel, a firestorm, a holy weapon cast in flesh, and though they fight for mankind, they do not belong to it. They do not love it. Many don't even understand it. The peasant who kneels before them is as alien to them as a Xenos is to us. The people they save, they are abstractions. Tactical objectives, variables in a battle plan. And yet, for all their distance, there remains a terrible contradiction. Some Space Marines still feel. Not all the programming holds. In rare moments, something pierces the void, a glimpse of what they once were. And when that happens, it is not joy or clarity that follows. It is agony, because to remember one's humanity after centuries of being a weapon is not a blessing, it is a curse, and that is a pain no bolter can silence. Becoming a Space Marine is often spoken of as an ascension, a rise from mortal flesh to something greater, something divine. The Imperial cult even encourages this notion, branding the process as a holy transformation, a rite of passage that bridges the human and the divine. But the truth of that transformation is nothing less than a systematic annihilation of the self. It is not ascension. It is erasure. What is given in strength and power is paid for in blood, in memory, and in identity. The cost is total. The path to becoming an astartes begins early, usually between the ages of 10 and 14. Recruits are stolen, yes, stolen, from their worlds. Some are taken from death worlds where survival is measured in minutes, others from hive cities where cruelty is currency. They are not chosen for moral worth or nobility, but for physical potential, genetic compatibility, and psychological malleability. The chapters need boys who will survive agony without breaking, and who will accept a new truth without clinging to the old. Love, family, culture, these are obstacles. So they are stripped away, usually violently. The process begins with brutal physical trials. These are not training sessions. They are designed to kill. The aspirants are starved, beaten, burned, drowned, and hunted. Some are forced to fight each other to the death. Others are tested for loyalty through orchestrated betrayals. They are told lies, given false hope, then punished for believing. Every step is a lesson. Trust no one, feel nothing, endure everything. The survivors, often only a fraction of those taken, are then subjected to the implantation of the gene seed. These implants do not just grow organs, they change the brain. The secondary heart, the olytic kidney, the multi-lung, each has its own function. But the most terrifying is the psycho-indoctrination that accompanies them. Through hypnosuggestion, subliminal messaging, neural stimulation, and chemical conditioning, the recruit's mind is bent into something compliant. He no longer dreams of home. He no longer mourns lost friends. His thoughts are invaded every night by whispered mantras of loyalty, of fire, of war. Eventually, the whispers become his own voice. What he once was fades, and a new creature rises in its place. But even this is not the full extent of the cost. As the body grows, warps, and adapts, pain becomes a constant companion. Bones shift painfully under the skin, nerves realign, the digestive system is overhauled. Many cannot endure it and die mid-transformation, their bodies tearing themselves apart. Others go mad. There are cases, quietly documented, never spoken, of aspirants who rip out their own eyes, who attempt to tear off their skin, or who beg to be killed. Mercy is rarely granted. Even for those who survive, the rituals do not end. Their identities are further erased through service. They are assigned designations, not names. They are trained to respond to numbers, to honorifics, to titles. In some chapters, their original names are forbidden. In others, they are replaced with titles earned only through blood. Some Space Marines go centuries without speaking their own name, if they even remember it. The new Astartes is no longer a boy, but neither is he a man. He is something in between, a construct of war, a sculpted predator. His sense of time is warped. Days blur into weeks. Decades pass without change. Friendships are functional, never intimate. Rivalries are permitted only if they serve purpose. The world becomes narrow. Objectives, targets, protocols. There's no room for dreams, for longing, for art. Only duty. This is the price of ascension. To be an angel of death is to be dead in every way that once mattered. And yet, the galaxy does not see this horror. The people of the Imperium look upon the Astartes and see glory. They chant praises, weep with joy, raise statues in their honor. They do not see the child who was taken. They do not see the pain that shaped him. They do not see the man who was erased. They only see the armor. the gun, the myth. And that is the cruelest part of all, because for the Space Marine, there is no return. The path to becoming post-human is a one-way descent. There is no going back, no redemption, no healing. The body may live for centuries, but the boy, the human, he died the moment the chapter claimed him. And the galaxy will never mourn him, because it never knew he existed. Behind every towering Space Marine stands a mountain of corpses. Not the enemies they've slain, those are countless, yes, but expected. No, the corpses that truly stain their legacy are the ones no one speaks of. The countless children who never made it through the trials. For every one astartes who dons the sacred armor, there are hundreds, sometimes thousands, who died screaming in the dark, unknown and unburied. Their sacrifice is not honored. It is hidden, because the Imperium cannot afford to tell the truth about how its angels are made. The recruitment process varies from chapter to chapter, but one thing remains constant. It is a slaughter. Most aspirants are culled before they even receive a single implant. The initial trials, often referred to as the weeding, are physical crucibles designed to expose weakness. Some chapters drop their candidates into death zones and monitor which ones make it back. Others force them to fight each other in blindfolded melee. The goal is not to train, it is to destroy. Only those who survive the worst are considered worthy of being broken further. Even after surviving these ordeals, the mortality rate only increases. The surgical implantation of the gene seed is a gauntlet of biocompatibility tests. Each organ has a chance of rejection, and each rejection is lethal. The failure of the secondary heart means cardiac collapse. A botched multi-lung integration leads to suffocation. In some cases, a half-formed black carapace fuses imperfectly, leaving the subject in constant, untreatable agony. When this happens, the solution is not medicine, it is execution. Some are euthanized. Others are simply forgotten in dark vaults. The Mechanicus calls it biological attrition. The chaplains call it the Emperor's judgment. The psychological indoctrination is equally lethal. Many aspirants break during the hypno-conditioning stages. Their minds collapse under the barrage of artificial memories, ritual programming, and emotional suppression. Nightmares take on a life of their own. Some scream until their vocal cords rupture. Others claw at their own faces. There are whispered records of entire aspirant batches going mad simultaneously. An error in the mnemonic code, a miscalculation in psychic feedback. The solution is always the same: purge the failures. Start again. And the most terrifying part? The system is not designed to prevent these deaths. It is designed to necessitate them. Space Marines must be forged in agony, so only those who endure the worst can be trusted with power. It is not efficiency. It is philosophy. A doctrine of pain as purification, of death as a proving ground. The chapters believe that only through endless culling can they ensure purity. But at what cost? Some of the worst horrors occur not in training cages or surgical chambers, but in the minds of those few who survive. Imagine a boy who watches 100 of his peers die, some of them friends, some of them just terrified children, and is told to feel nothing. Imagine enduring pain beyond comprehension and being taught to thank the Emperor for the privilege. This is not just conditioning, it is spiritual mutilation. And for those who do survive, the silence becomes a prison. They cannot grieve, they cannot speak of what they saw. To do so is heresy. So they bury the trauma deep, layer upon layer, until it festers in ways no one can diagnose. In some chapters, there are whispered legends, half-truths and unspoken warnings about aspirants who survived wrong. Boys who made it through all the implants, passed every trial, but emerged different. They follow orders, pass inspections, fire their bolters, but their eyes are empty, their movements too precise. Some whisper that these are souls who died during the culling, but whose bodies kept going. Silent, obedient, hollow. They are kept in squads, watched closely, sent on missions where return is unlikely. The chapters do not call them failures, but they do not call them brothers either. None of this is recorded in the histories. The glory scrolls mention only the success stories, the valiant, the victorious, the blessed. The training halls are adorned with murals of triumph, not of torment. The chaplains speak of sacrifice, but never specify whose. And the people of the Imperium, desperate for hope, never ask. They look at a Space Marine and see a savior. They do not see the thousands of corpses buried beneath his boots. And perhaps that is the greatest tragedy of all. The Imperium demands heroes, and it gets them, forged from the suffering of the forgotten. And because those lost voices never rise again, because they are never mourned or remembered, their deaths become invisible. A footnote in silence, a statistic in the darkness. The culling is not just a horror. It is a genocide without witness, a sacrifice with no altar, a secret written in the bones of children. A Space Marine has no home, not in the way we understand it. His chapter might reside in a fortress monastery, a massive Baroque edifice carved into a mountain or orbiting a dead world, but that place is not his own. It is a reliquary, a tomb of history, a weapons depot. His quarters are a cell. His possessions, if he is allowed any, are ritualistic. A purity seal, a bolt pistol, perhaps a shard of rock from the world he once called home. But even those mementos are curated by his superiors, because in truth, the Astartes does not belong to himself. From the moment he is selected, he is property, owned by the Imperium, owned by the chapter, a tool, not a man, a relic, not a son. There is no room for personal desire in the life of an Astartes. There is no leave, no family, no rest. There are no vacations, no contemplative retirements, no walks through forests or across beaches. If he dreams of such things, it is in defiance of everything he has been made to be. The Codex Astartes outlines protocols for warfare, for command, for battle honor, but nowhere does it speak of happiness. Nowhere is there provision for sorrow. The emotional life of a Space Marine is a closed circuit. Honor your duty, purge weakness, execute the mission. Anything else is suppressed, chemically and spiritually. In many ways, a Space Marine's sense of self is purposefully obliterated. Ritual is his rhythm. Litany is his inner voice. When he prays, he does so not as a man seeking solace, but as a soldier reciting operational parameters disguised as faith. Even meditation, a practice used to steady the mind, is conducted through visualizations of battle, memory drills of war gear assembly, or recountings of legendary victories. The mind is not allowed to wander. The soul is not allowed to question. Silence is rare, and even in silence there is expectation. For the lucky few, their loyalty to the chapter becomes their anchor. The bond of brotherhood, forged through shared suffering and combat, gives some sense of belonging. But it is a conditional, monitored loyalty. If a brother falls, he is mourned with ritual, not grief. If a Marine hesitates, shows emotion, or strays from doctrine, his brethren are expected to report him. There is no privacy in the mind of a Space Marine. His thoughts are weapons. His instincts are property, and if he begins to think of himself as something more, he becomes a liability. Consider what this means, truly. A being capable of immense thought, with enhanced cognition and memory, is never allowed to explore those faculties freely. A Space Marine cannot write poetry, he cannot paint, he cannot build a home for himself or pursue a love of astronomy or history or philosophy. If he were to try, the act would be suspect. Even introspection, deep, honest self-examination, is discouraged. It is seen as weakness, as distraction. And so, their vast intellectual potential is shackled. They become brilliant tacticians, but not thinkers. Masters of war, but not wisdom. When a Space Marine falls in battle, he does not choose his end. He does not cry out for a mother he cannot remember, or a god he does not truly believe in. He fights until the final moment, and even his death is owned. His corpse becomes a relic. His armor is reclaimed. His name may be inscribed if he was fortunate, or it may be lost entirely. There is no funeral where loved ones weep, no headstone in a family crypt. His death is another calculation, a loss in logistics, a minor dent in operational capacity. Some chapters push this philosophy to extremes. The Iron Hands treat emotion as weakness and augment their bodies until flesh becomes an afterthought. The Black Templars reject personal identity entirely, becoming avatars of crusade. Even the more human chapters, like the Ultramarines, ultimately value conformity over individuality. There are exceptions, always, but they are rare and often punished. A Space Marine who begins to question his role risks not just censure, but execution. Because doubt spreads, and if one warrior remembers he was once a boy, others might remember too. That is a threat the Imperium cannot tolerate. There are no old Space Marines in quiet repose, reflecting on a life well lived. Those who live long enough to become dreadnoughts exist in perpetual slumber, waking only for war. Their thoughts are clouded by pain and age. their memories a fading echo. And those who are too damaged for even that fate, they disappear. Sometimes they are sent on penitent crusades, never to return. Sometimes they are simply locked away, their minds too broken, their bodies too scarred. A Space Marine's life is not his own. It never was. From the moment he is chosen, he is consumed. The horror is not just in the battles he fights or the things he sees. The horror is in the quiet moments, the ones we never hear about, where he might remember a song, a face, a sunset, and realize that he will never, ever feel those things again. And then he suppresses the thought. Because that, too, is his duty. To look upon a Space Marine is to see the triumph of science and ritual, a body perfected for war, a will sculpted for obedience. But beneath that gleaming armor, past the purity seals and heraldic symbols, lies a hollowness that no genetic enhancement can fill. It is a silence not of peace, but of loss. A spiritual void that few dare acknowledge. Because though their flesh is made strong and their armor is unyielding, the soul of a Space Marine is often a haunted thing. What is left behind after so much is taken? What remains when humanity is stripped away layer by layer, organ by organ, memory by memory? The truth is that many astartes lose belief. Not suddenly, not loudly, but slowly. In increments too small to measure, they cease to feel the things that once anchored them. The litanies become empty, the creeds hollow. They chant the Emperor's name as they purge heretics, but the words are recited without conviction. They kneel in sacred rituals and feel nothing. Some begin to notice this emptiness and bury it deeper. Others accept it and carry on. But a few cannot endure the silence, and it begins to eat them from within. You won't find records of these Marines. They are not noted in chapter histories or imperial archives. Their names are erased, or worse, never spoken. But the signs are there, if you look closely. Veterans who speak less each year. Brothers who request more dangerous missions without explanation. Chaplains who recite the same sermon a dozen times with eyes that never focus. These are not symptoms of physical decay. They are echoes of a war fought not on battlefields, but within the mind and soul. Some call it the shadow. A quiet term whispered by serfs and apothecaries, describing those moments when an astartes sits alone, motionless for hours, lost in thought he cannot voice. Others speak of the gloom, a period of silence and detachment that comes after prolonged campaigns. It is not battle fatigue. It is not exhaustion. It is something deeper, a realization that no matter how many wars they fight, no matter how many enemies they slay, nothing changes. The Imperium still rots. The people still suffer, the Emperor still does not speak, and yet they fight on. Because to stop fighting would mean facing that silence directly. And that is the greatest terror. Not demons, not Xenos, not heresy, but the possibility that it was all for nothing. That the billions of lives extinguished, the world scorched, the brothers lost, were simply the grinding of a machine that never knew them. That their faith was a leash, their victories illusions, their purpose a lie, whispered to them in childhood and carved into their bones. This spiritual hollowness is rarely addressed. The astartes are taught to see doubt as weakness and weakness as failure. So they wear masks, not of metal, but of certainty. They perform their duties with precision. They chant louder. They kill faster. Some embrace fanaticism, believing that if they burn bright enough, the emptiness will flee. Others immerse themselves in ritual, reciting litanies by the hour, purifying weapons that need no cleansing, sharpening blades that will never dull. But some break. These are the ones who vanish, sent on penitence crusades, quietly reassigned, or simply declared missing. There is no ceremony, no mourning. They are erased from the record, their memories distributed across 1,000 sealed vox logs and redacted mission reports. It is not cruelty. It is containment. The chapters understand the risk. One broken astartes can unravel a squad, a company, a legacy. And yet, even in this bleakness, there is a strange beauty. Because despite the silence, despite the soul-deep exhaustion, they fight on. Not for faith, not for glory, but because it is all they have left. The battlefield becomes a place of clarity where orders are simple and purpose is clear. In war, they do not need to think. They only need to act. And for a few brief moments, the silence fades. There are rumors, always rumors, of Marines who rediscover meaning. A dying warrior who weeps at a sunrise. A veteran who saves a child without orders. A dreadnought who speaks of dreams. These stories are passed in hushed tones, half believed, half hoped. They are not doctrine, they are not truth. But they persist, because even in the void, there is the faintest whisper of humanity, a spark buried beneath centuries of blood and silence. And maybe that is the cruelest truth of all, that no matter how much is taken, how much is stripped away, the soul endures, wounded, silent, but alive. Trapped in armor, bound by duty, waiting for a moment of light that may never come. They are the mightiest of humanity's warriors, the chosen, the revered. But reverence is a mask, and beneath it lies blood. Not the blood of enemies, though there is no shortage of that. The blood that stains the hands of Space Marines, and is never spoken of, is that of the innocent, civilians, colonists, entire populations extinguished not by alien claws or demonic fire, but by bolter and chainsword in the name of efficiency, loyalty, or silence. The Space Marines are not just protectors, they are executioners. And the Imperium ensures that we never see the bodies. The most infamous tool in their arsenal is exterminatus, the sanctioned annihilation of a world. While the Inquisition often gives the order, it is the astartes who carry it out. Their strike cruisers rain cyclonic torpedoes or virus bombs on the surface below, reducing billions to ash. The rationale is always the same: contamination, heresy, corruption. But what is not spoken is the margin of error. The gray areas. The times when a few rebellious cultists were enough to doom an entire planet. The times when the presence of a single psyker child sealed the fate of a city. The times when a Space Marine, alone and unquestioned, judged an entire culture unworthy of survival. We are told these actions are righteous. We are shown sanitized data, casualty numbers rounded into anonymity. But those who have served in logistics, who have seen the before and after, whisper different truths. They speak of oceans turned to steam, of skeletal cities where children clutch toys now vitrified into glass. They speak of orbital auspex readings showing mass panic, escape ships shot down as they fled. And at the center of it all, the angels of death, unmoved, righteous, precise. But the atrocities go beyond planetary scale. In close-quarters operations, Space Marines often deploy into populated areas. Hive cities, underground catacombs, penal colonies. Their orders are to secure, to purge, to cleanse. And in that language, antiseptic, cold, lies a terrible freedom. A single squad can decide that a corridor of civilians might be tainted, that a refuge of injured workers harbors heresy, that fear itself is evidence of guilt. And so, bolters roar. Flesh is shredded, and when the smoke clears, there is no tribunal, no record, only silence. The truth is, most astartes do not see civilians as fellow humans. How could they? They are genetically and psychologically alien. To a Space Marine, a crying mother or a screaming child is not a moral dilemma. It is noise, an obstacle, a variable to be managed. And when weighed against mission parameters, against the lives of fellow battle brothers, against the sacred goals of the chapter, such variables are often deemed expendable. There are even darker rumors of cover-ups, of chapters that went too far, not in battle but in peace. A chapter deployed to a compliant world for recruitment, only to find cultural resistance. Not heresy, not rebellion, just refusal. And in response, they razed cities, shattered infrastructure, destroyed generations. The Inquisition looked the other way, or perhaps simply agreed. Some Space Marines feel the weight of these actions. There are scattered records of individuals who questioned a purge, who stayed their blade when ordered to kill. They do not last long. Some are executed for insubordination. Others are reassigned to missions with no return. Their names are erased, their actions labeled deviation. Because a Marine who hesitates is a Marine who might remember what it means to be human. And the Imperium cannot allow that. So the atrocities are buried beneath ceremony. Massacres are reframed as purifications. Civilian deaths are reclassified as non-essential collateral. Entire cultures are remembered only as cautionary tales of disloyalty. The records are edited, the stories rewritten. And the populace, desperate for safety, accepts it. They light candles for the angels of death. They sing hymns in their honor. They pray for salvation, even as their worlds burn under ceramite boots. This is the horror the Space Marines keep hidden. Not because they fear retribution. Who could punish them? Not because they feel guilt. Most no longer remember how. But because the truth would shatter the illusion. It would reveal that the line between salvation and slaughter is not just thin, it is imaginary. that the heroes of humanity are not merely warriors, they are weapons. And weapons do not distinguish between target and bystander. They obey, they execute, they move on, and the galaxy turns, soaked in blood. They call each other brother. They fight side by side, bleed together, stand vigil over fallen comrades. The imagery of brotherhood among the Space Marines is one of the Imperium's most enduring myths, a bond forged in battle, unbreakable and sacred. But this, too, is a lie, or at the very least, a distortion. Because within the ranks of the Astartes, brotherhood is not an organic bond. It is a mechanism of control, an engineered loyalty that ensures compliance, suppresses dissent, and keeps the warriors of the Emperor marching forward, even when their souls begin to fracture. When a recruit becomes an astartes, his past is erased. His name, his lineage, his memories all are overwritten by the chapter. In their place, he is given a new identity, Battle Brother. The title is not just honorary, it becomes the framework of his existence. Every interaction, every ritual, every thought is directed through this lens. He is no longer a man with personal desires or doubts. He is a cell in a greater organism. The chapter is the body. The brotherhood is the blood. This isn't just metaphor. The psycho-indoctrination procedures that each Astartes undergoes are specifically designed to reinforce dependence on the chapter. Emotional bonding is not encouraged randomly. It is crafted. Hypnosuggestion implants artificial camaraderie, synchronizes group loyalty, and suppresses individual hierarchy of affection. A Marine is conditioned to feel pride when his brother succeeds, shame when he fails, and dread at the thought of being cast out. In short, the chapter becomes both family and surveillance state, a place where love and loyalty are indistinguishable from obligation. In battle, this manufactured bond is weaponized. Squad cohesion is absolute. Orders are followed instantly, not just out of training, but out of emotional compulsion. To question a superior is to betray one's kin. To falter in combat is to endanger one's brothers. Every decision is filtered through the lens of group survival and group judgment. This makes the Space Marines nearly unstoppable as a fighting force, but it also makes them prisoners of each other. The cost becomes clear when something goes wrong. If a Marine begins to question or to show signs of psychological strain, it is his brothers who are expected to notice and report. There are no confidants in the chapter, no friends who will keep your secrets, because every brother is also a watcher, and if one falls, the others are held responsible. This ensures silence, compliance, fear disguised as fellowship. In some chapters, this surveillance becomes grotesquely literal. The Iron Hands, for instance, monitor emotional deviation as a sign of weakness. The Night Lords, twisted echoes of what the Astartes were meant to be, use fear itself as a bonding agent. Even in more stable chapters like the Ultramarines or Salamanders, there exists a rigid hierarchy where personal grief or doubt must be hidden, lest it damage the morale of the unit. The illusion of brotherhood is most cruelly exposed when a Marine is cast out. Whether through failure, injury, or perceived heresy, once a brother is exiled, he is not mourned, he is erased. The bonds that seemed unbreakable are severed in an instant. Names are stricken from the rolls, history is rewritten, and those who once swore to fight and die beside him now look away, recite the proper litanies, and move on. Because the chapter demands continuity. There is no room for memory, no space for mourning. The bond was never about love, it was about utility. And yet, within this framework of control, something still persists. Real emotion flickers through the cracks. There are moments, rare and unrecorded, when a Marine does risk everything to save a brother. When grief is felt, not recited. When silence at a funeral is not ritual, but genuine pain. These moments are not encouraged. They are never spoken of. But they exist. Perhaps because no amount of conditioning can fully erase the human spark. But the tragedy is that even these sparks become fuel for control. A Marine who defies orders to save a wounded comrade might be praised, but the event will be reframed as loyalty to the mission. The emotion will be dissected, classified, ritualized. What was once spontaneous becomes a litany, a code. And in that transformation, the truth of it dies. So the brotherhood remains, visible, celebrated, hollow, a mask worn by killers who cannot cry, a chain disguised as love. And the Space Marines, these godlike warriors of the Imperium, march on shoulder to shoulder, never truly alone, but never truly free. There are no retirement homes for Space Marines. No veterans' halls where old warriors trade stories beside roaring hearths. No monuments to those who simply faded, broken by things that did not kill them on the battlefield. Because when an astartes is no longer useful, when he is too damaged to fight, too unstable to obey, or too shattered to conceal the horror he carries, he disappears, silently, systematically, erased by a war machine that cannot afford to show weakness. The silence around these disappearances is not accidental, it is policy, a hidden mechanism in the great engine of the Imperium. Some Space Marines fall physically, a catastrophic wound, a crippled limb, a destroyed organ. If the apothecaries cannot salvage them with bionics or gene repair, they may be entombed within a dreadnought if they are deemed spiritually pure and strategically valuable. But this is a cruel mockery of life. Trapped in a sarcophagus, awakened only for war, their thoughts dulled by pain and the fog of centuries, dreadnoughts are not preserved. They are weaponized corpses, a last use for a ruined soul. But most disappear not because of broken bodies, but broken minds. The psychic toll of centuries of slaughter, the suppression of identity, the trauma of loss endured without grief, it adds up. Marines begin to see things, hear voices, doubt orders, question rituals. Some fall into total silence, unable or unwilling to speak. Others grow erratic, whispering to themselves, refusing to sleep, obsessing over meaningless details. And some remember too much. A mother's name, a brother's face, the laughter of a village long burned. These are the most dangerous, because memory is the first step to rebellion. There is no formal record of how these Marines are handled, but scattered evidence, recovered from corrupted Vox logs and forbidden texts, paints a grim picture. Some are summoned to private audiences with chaplains and never return. Others are placed in isolation, told they are undergoing purification or penitence. The doors are sealed, the lights dimmed, their names are quietly removed from squad manifests. A replacement arrives, the mission continues. And then there are the black cells, a term whispered among chapter serfs and avoided entirely by the astartes. Supposedly deep within the fortress monasteries, these are vaults where broken Marines are locked away. Not for healing, not for hope, but for containment. They sit in silence, perhaps armored, perhaps chained, dreaming of battles long past. Some scream, some pray, some simply stare at the wall for years. No one visits them, no one speaks their names. What makes this fate so terrible is not just the abandonment, it is the erasure. The Imperium does not allow for flawed legends. The image of the perfect warrior must be preserved. And so, when a Space Marine falls into madness or despair, he is not pitied, he is not studied, he is deleted. The librarians may redact records. The chapter's history may be rewritten, and the brotherhood, once so sacred, is ordered to forget. To remember him is to risk their own place, their own silence. But it does not stop there. There are tales, half believed even among inquisitors, of entire squads disappeared, not by battle, not by sabotage, but by quiet purging. Anomalies in behavior, signs of psychological drift. The risk was too great. Better to erase the unit, incinerate the records, and issue a new deployment order. The gears must turn. The system must not show cracks, even if it means killing the Emperor's most loyal servants in cold, secret silence. And yet, among some Marines, the fear of this fate looms greater than death in battle. To be forgotten is the final heresy. To be broken and cast aside, stripped of even the legacy of service, is a fate worse than damnation. It is obliteration, not by chaos, not by enemy fire, but by the very empire they swore to protect. There are stories of those who sensed the end coming, who fled, who disappeared into the void, into the dark between stars. Renegades, yes, but not traitors. Just broken warriors who could no longer live under the weight of silence. They are hunted, of course, labeled heretics. But some believe they wander still, whispering their truths into forgotten Vox relays, warning those few who might one day understand. Because the final truth is this: in a galaxy ruled by war, the only thing more terrifying than death is being forgotten after it. And for the Space Marines, humanity's greatest heroes, there is no grave, no epitaph, no final word. Only silence. Among all the sins buried within the armor of a Space Marine, there is one the Imperium dreads more than heresy, more than mutation, even more than the touch of chaos. It is the sin of remembering. of reaching back through the fog of indoctrination, the centuries of war, and reclaiming something forbidden, humanity. For most astartes, this possibility is crushed during transformation. But a rare few resist, a few never fully let go, and an even rarer few try to reclaim what was stolen. These are the true heretics, not because they betray the emperor, but because they remember they were once men. It might begin with a dream, an old one, the sound of waves, a name spoken by a mother long dead, a memory not implanted by hypno-indoctrination, but real, raw, and it shakes them. For most Space Marines, such memories are dismissed as weakness or purged through ritual. But some hold on. They question, quietly at first, why do we fight this way? Why do we kill without hesitation? Why do we never rest, never choose, never grieve? These thoughts are lethal, not to enemies, to the Marine himself, because the system cannot tolerate them. The chapter cannot accommodate them. A brother who begins to ask why is a crack in the fortress wall. His mere presence becomes a threat. Not because he will spread rebellion, but because he might awaken others. And so the pressure mounts. The chaplains take notice. The apothecaries whisper about chemical recalibration. He is watched, judged, tested. Those who persist often try to reconnect with civilians. They linger a little longer among the rescued. They ask questions. They observe human behavior with something like longing. They do not speak of it, of course. That would be foolish, but it shows, in their eyes, in their silence, and their brothers notice. Some try to help, others report. Loyalty to the chapter must come before all. Some of these Marines attempt to reclaim their names. Not their honorifics, not their titles, their real names, the ones they were born with. They write them in hidden places, whisper them in private prayer. A name is a dangerous thing in the Imperium. It carries memory, identity, history. For a Space Marine to reclaim his name is to defy the conditioning that made him a weapon. It is a quiet form of rebellion, and it is punished with finality. There are even rarer cases, nearly apocryphal, of astartes who defect not to chaos, not to Xenos, but to humanity itself. They vanish from the ranks and reappear years later, living in disguise among mortals, often as warriors, sometimes as protectors. Their power makes them feared, yes, but also revered. Not as angels, but as fallen gods who chose to walk beside men rather than above them. These stories are suppressed. Any planet suspected of harboring such a Marine faces censure, even exterminatus. The idea must be crushed, because it is too powerful. Imagine for a moment the danger of a Space Marine who feels love, who mourns the dead, who questions orders not out of treachery, but morality. This is not just a deviation. It is a mirror held up to the entire system, reflecting its cruelty, its emptiness. If one Astartes can remember his humanity, then all could. And if that happened, the chapter would fall. The dream of the Imperium would fracture. The angels of death would become men again. And men make their own choices. Of course, this cannot be allowed. So when a Space Marine shows signs of such awakening, he is dealt with quickly. A final mission, a duel in the training cages, a failed retrieval. His armor is repurposed, his name expunged, and the system moves on, unchanged. The chaplains preach harder, the rituals intensify, and the other Marines, those who may have felt something stir, bury it deeper. But the echoes remain, a faint warmth in a cold soul, a hesitation before the kill, a memory that refuses to die. And though the system is vast, though the chapters are ancient, cracks form. Because the truth, once glimpsed, cannot be unseen. And even in the heart of a post-human killer, a single ember of humanity can smolder for centuries. This is the heresy the Imperium fears most. Not that a Space Marine will fall to chaos, but that he will fall to memory, to kindness, to regret, that he will look upon the galaxy not as a battlefield but as a tragedy, and see himself not as its salvation, but as one of its greatest monsters. They are called immortal, demigods of war, blessed by the Emperor, eternal guardians of humanity's future. But like so many things in the Imperium, this is a lie wrapped in ritual, gilded with propaganda, and sold to a desperate people who need to believe in the myth. Because the truth is far more tragic and far more terrifying. Space Marines are not immortal. They are dying. Not quickly, not visibly, but slowly, painfully, and in ways the Imperium dares not name. The lie of immortality is one of the cruelest burdens the Adeptus Astartes carry. And it is killing them. Physically, yes, a Space Marine can live for centuries. Some have served for over 1,000 years. Their gene seed extends life, accelerates healing, and wards off decay. But it is not perfect. Every wound leaves a scar, every battle a mark. Limbs are lost and regrown, organs replaced with mechanicus-grown substitutes. Many veterans are more bionic than flesh. Their bones creak, their senses dull, and their reflexes, while still faster than any mortals, begin to slow. There are no peaceful deaths in sleep. There is no gentle old age, only entropy, resisted with violence. Mentally, the decay is worse. The astartes' mind, while fortified, is still a mind, and a mind that endures centuries of war begins to fracture. Memories blur. Emotional detachment calcifies into a hollowness that cannot be reversed. Battle brothers become walking ghosts, going through the motions with grim precision. Some forget the names of comrades long dead. Others confuse battles, misremember victories, or relive the same trauma in endless cycles. Time becomes meaningless, a blur of endless duty. For many, the only anchor is war. Without it, they drift, lost in the vast silence of their own unraveling thoughts. The gene seed itself, once revered as a sacred gift, is a source of slow corruption. In theory, it should produce new organs, new warriors, new legends. But in truth, it mutates. It degrades. Each generation of Space Marines is a copy of a copy, less pure, more flawed. Some chapters suffer openly. The Blood Angels battle the Black Rage and the Red Thirst, legacies of a broken line. The Space Wolves endure the Canis Helix, their gene seed twisting their minds toward bestial madness. The Flesh Terrors teeter on the brink of uncontrolled frenzy. These are not isolated cases. They are warnings. And the truth is spreading. Apothecaries know this. They study the gene seed. They monitor the degradation. But their reports are sealed. The knowledge is confined, because to admit the rot is to admit that the foundation of the astartes, their very essence, is crumbling. So they whisper. They experiment. They pray. And they hope no one notices that the heroes of the Imperium are slowly being undone from within. Then there is the psychological toll of living so long with no reprieve. A Space Marine never stops. He is always training, always preparing, always ready to deploy. There are no holidays, no moments of laughter or rest. If he lives for 700 years, he fights for 700 years. If he lives for 1,000, he watches 1,000 brothers die. Time becomes a burden, existence a curse. And some eventually break, not with a scream, but with a silence. They sit motionless, stop responding. Their eyes lose focus. Their voices vanish. These are not deaths, they are endings, and the chapters hide them. The myth of immortality is further reinforced by relics. Dreadnoughts, chapter masters, revered heroes who have lived for millennia. But these figures are not models of health. The dreadnought is a prison, a sarcophagus of agony and half-lucid dreams. The chapter master is often kept alive with invasive bionics and chemical interventions. Their wisdom is real, yes, but their immortality is a cost, not a blessing. And worst of all, they know. Deep down, every Space Marine knows he is not immortal. He feels the stiffness in his joints, the loss in his reactions, the creeping numbness in his thoughts. He sees younger brothers rise and surpass him. He watches squads cycle through new recruits while he remains a monument to an era no longer his own. And yet he must pretend. He must chant the litanies, swing the blade, speak the creeds, all while knowing that the end is coming, not from enemy fire, but from within. The Imperium will never admit this. To do so would shatter the image. The people need to believe their protectors are eternal, that the Emperor's chosen do not falter, do not age, do not die. And so the truth is buried. Deaths are masked, madness is renamed devotion, decay is declared transformation, and the astartes, bound by duty and silenced by loyalty, march on toward their end. Because in the Imperium, even gods must die. But they must do it quietly, and they do, one by one, in the shadows, forgotten not by time but by design. There was a time long ago when the Emperor walked among men and the Space Marines were his creation, not as gods, not as monsters, but as guardians. They were meant to be shields, not swords, protectors, not executioners, symbols of unity, not terror. But the galaxy twisted. The Imperium ossified, and the astartes were reshaped not by the Emperor's vision, but by desperation, doctrine, and dread. They became exactly what he never wanted them to be: brutal, blind, and broken. When the Emperor designed the astartes, it was with a very specific purpose, not to rule, but to reclaim. They were forged to unite a shattered species, to bring light to the stars, and to serve as emissaries of reason. The Great Crusade was not supposed to be endless. It was a means to an end, a future where humanity could stand on its own, without the need for demigods in armor. The Primarchs understood this, at least at first. Guilliman built civil institutions, Horus built trust, Magnus studied enlightenment. Even Lorgar, before his fall, sought to give the Imperium meaning. But then came betrayal. The heresy shattered everything. The Emperor was confined to the Golden Throne, the Primarchs scattered or slain, and the dream of the Great Crusade gave way to survivalism. And survival, in the Imperium, always means fear. From that fear rose the ecclesiarchy, the dogma, the fire. And the astartes, once intended to be a stepping stone toward human independence, became the very chains that bound the species to an eternal war. The Codex Astartes, created to prevent the rise of another warmaster, became a cage. What was once meant to distribute power became a straitjacket that stifled innovation and flexibility. The rituals once intended to instill discipline hardened into blind obedience. The genetic gift of the Emperor, once a beacon of unity, became a decaying relic, protected by superstition rather than science. The Space Marines did not evolve, they calcified. They became statues that could move, kill, and die, but never grow. And perhaps most damning of all, they became what the Emperor hated most, objects of worship. He wanted no gods, no temples, no chants raised in his name. But the Astartes are now idols, not just to the people of the Imperium, but to themselves. They speak of the Emperor's will, as if they could hear it. They perform holy rites before battle, as if he watches. They name their weapons, bless their armor, and kill not out of strategy, but sacrament. Every act of war is a prayer, every death a ritual. The Astartes are now priests of a faith their creator despised, and they don't even know it. Some do, a few old ones, veterans who remember older times or who have read fragments of forbidden history. They see the rot, they feel the weight of the lie, and they keep silent, because to speak would be to die. Because there is no place for the truth in the Imperium anymore, only survival. Only the war. And what of the new Astartes, the Primaris forged in the dark of the Indomitus Crusade, engineered by Belisarius' call from ancient gene stock and lost secrets? Are they a correction? A return to the Emperor's original vision? Perhaps. But even they are indoctrinated into the same machinery, the same rituals, the same myths. Whatever purity they might have possessed is now buried beneath centuries of fear and fire. The Emperor never wanted immortal warriors trapped in endless war. He wanted peace. A future where the Astartes would no longer be needed. A time when humanity would govern itself, free of superstition, united in purpose. But the Imperium made sure that dream died with him. And now, 10,000 years later, his chosen sons still march across a galaxy he no longer recognizes, worshipping him as a god he never wanted to be, enacting violence he never envisioned, sustaining a status quo that mocks his every ideal. This is the final betrayal. Not by Horus, not by chaos, but by time, by survival, by the slow erosion of purpose into pathology. The Astartes are no longer what the Emperor created. They are what the Imperium needed. And what the Imperium needed was a myth. And myths do not question. Myths do not remember. Myths kill and are remembered for what they never truly were. There is a war that no bolter can silence, no blade can end, and no chaplain will ever acknowledge. It rages not on battlefields of ash and blood, but deep within the soul of the Adeptus Astartes. Beneath the ceramite, beyond the gene seed, past the oaths and creeds and rituals, lies a flickering spark of something the Imperium has tried desperately to erase: humanity. And that spark, that memory, that ache, that whisper, is the final secret Space Marines carry. The war they fight every day, even in silence. The last war, the war within. It begins as a fracture, a crack so small it could be ignored, a hesitation before pulling the trigger. A strange emotion watching civilians cheer, a dream not implanted by training, and then it grows. The questions start, the questions spoken aloud. It's never that, but thought. Why do we do this? Why are we still fighting? Does the Emperor even hear us? They suppress these thoughts, of course. They drown them in doctrine, in duty, in battle, but they never truly die. This war is not against chaos. Chaos is a visible enemy. You can shoot it, burn it, kill it. This war is against memory, against empathy, against the unbearable knowledge of what they once were, and what they have become. To be a Space Marine is to be a weapon forged from flesh and spirit, but stripped of choice. And sometimes when the battlefield grows quiet, the silence becomes unbearable. Because in that silence, they can hear themselves. And what they hear is not always a warrior. Some break quickly, others endure for centuries. But all of them, eventually, must confront the chasm between what they are and what they were meant to be. Some retreat further into ritual. They chant louder, kill faster, erase more of themselves with each battle. Others seek death, not in words, but in action. They take the most dangerous missions, challenge impossible foes, throw themselves into the fire and hope they do not return. And when they do return, it is not as heroes, but as shadows. There are stories, denied by official record, but whispered in the back halls of monasteries, of Space Marines who simply walked away, who laid down their weapons, who turned off their Vox units and vanished into the darkness between stars. Some become recluses, hiding on forgotten worlds, protecting villages from raiders in silence. Others wander, not knowing what they seek, only that they can no longer kill for a cause they no longer believe in. They are hunted, of course, labeled traitors, heretics, not because they betrayed the Emperor, but because they remembered they were men. And yet, these deserters, these ghosts, are not villains. They are veterans of the greatest war the Imperium denies, the fight to remain human in a system built to crush humanity. They are evidence that the indoctrination is not perfect, that the rituals are not complete, that deep within even the most decorated astartes, there remains a spark that refuses to die. What does it say about the Imperium that it fears this more than chaos? That it would rather its angels fall to madness or mutation than awaken? Because awakening means change. It means truth. And the Imperium cannot survive truth. Its walls are built on lies, that the Emperor is a god, that the astartes are immortal, that the war is just, that the galaxy must burn to be saved. And if one Space Marine rejects these lies, others might follow. But despite all this, the war within continues. Every Marine fights it, whether he admits it or not. In every pause, in every dream, in every moment of doubt, the battle rages. And sometimes, just sometimes, the human wins. Not with a roar, but with a whisper. A quiet act of mercy. A prayer not found in the Codex. A tear no one sees. This is the truth the Imperium fears. That its greatest warriors might one day stop killing not because they are weak, but because they remember they were never meant to be monsters. That they might reclaim the very thing the galaxy tried to steal. Not their power, not their weapons, but their soul. And maybe, just maybe, that is where salvation truly lies. Thanks for walking this path through shadow and fire with me. If this vision of Warhammer 40k speaks to you, the tragic beauty, the forgotten truths, the secret wars beneath the surface, then subscribe. Join the legion of those who see beyond the myth. We're just getting started.